My name's Ned Lycan. Unlike Harry, I did not grow up here in Wilmington. I grew up in a town that's about 30 miles north of here called Minot. Now, what's exciting about Minot? Well, for one thing, there was one Jewish family in town, and we were it. That's if you stay with my grandparents' family. For a while, there were actually family members that had different households. I don't know when we started coming here, but I believe it was when my sister and I got to the age where I think my parents thought we needed a Jewish education. Because before that, my grandparents went north to, what was the town up there they went to? LaSalle. Spring Bay, up there. That's where they went for services. I had an Uncle Joe Lycan who started coming here, he and his wife, and they got into the group, the Jewish families here, and I think that's how we ended up coming this way too. They were very social. My aunt and uncle were very social with their Jewish peers here in town. The Stearns, and there was a lot of that. They had a poker group, and my uncle hosted the games when it was his turn, and drove up here, and they came to Minot and played.
Also Mahjong.
Oh, I don't know about Mahjong. I can't answer that. My experience here is really very limited. I'm a tad younger than Harry. So I do remember coming here for services, high holiday services. And for high holiday services, what did we kids get? Be quiet and don't move. We were always fidgeting in the seats. These were the pews. They're very uncomfortable if you have to sit there in them a long time. I mean, no cushions or anything, that's what they were. And we were kids, and we didn't want to sit. They'd shush us, tell us. And there were a lot of us. There were quite a few of us that were about the same age. My parents' age, there was a group of a lot of people here in town. And they were mostly merchants, as Harry said. You had used car dealer, new car dealer, Jack and Jill, children's clothes. Then, of course, you had the department stores and the furniture stores. That's what most of them were. That's what they all were. Very civic-minded people. Very important for commerce in town. It was all very important. For me, I come in here, it was the temple. Neat. Okay. I can remember studying the stained glass windows a lot. Didn't pay much attention to what was going on behind me. Wasn't very interested. Choir was here. Same choir every high holiday. Wilcox was the pianist, or the organist. And I said, that's the way it's supposed to be. I mean, that's all I knew. Not living here, of course, I don't have any stories about being in school here. By the time I was my age, there were more Jewish kids in school than when Harry was here. Of course, my sister and I were the only two Jewish kids in Minot. That was very true. I had two cousins who were there earlier, but they're significantly older than me. And for the most part, because my father was a lawyer, well-respected man in town, my grandfather had been started out as a junk man and ended up being an automobile dealer, new and used cars. Because they were fairly well-respected in town, we didn't get any static in school at all. My dad was attorney for the school board. I mean, we didn't get any static. It just didn't happen. There was very little anti-Semitism toward us kids. Every once in a while, some kid would say something that wasn't appropriate, but for the most part, if it was there, it went over my head. I mean, it wasn't anything that really affected me. I think my sister had a little tougher time than I did. I was involved in sports, You know, when you're in sports, you're in a team. Teams stick together. So, if you're a football team, you got 40 guys behind you. If anybody gives you a static, there's 40 guys they could be talking to. So they didn't do it. My experiences here, besides holidays when I was younger, is I don't remember much education downstairs. As I recall, when the way the basement was set up then is they used partitions that were kind of like chalkboards, except they were paper. They were compressed paper on wooden stands. And that's how they divided up the place for education. It was not very satisfactory. What was going on in this class would be heard over there. So that was one of the things that the reason the new temple was built. In the interim, and Harry said he didn't remember this, I'm pretty sure it was Sam Stern owned a building in downtown Bloomington. It's where the Law and Justice Center is now. And this building, I don't know what the first floor was, but the second floor was vacant. So he turned it over for religious school. And on Sundays, we would go there, climb the stairs, and go to our classroom. And I think there were 4 or 5 classrooms, all facing the street. And that's where you had your class. You had a class. Now, I can't remember. The only teacher I remember is Rhonda Lowe. And I think I had her as she was a teacher of our class for several years. There were 5 of us in the class, 4 or 5 in my class. Milton Livingston, who was Ed and Z. Livingston's oldest son. There was a Barry Sue Morgenstern. Her father had an Army surplus store downtown Bloomington. Jan Lowenthal. Her dad was a doctor in Pontiac. Father was a doctor in Pontiac. 1, 2, 3. That's all I can remember. So we did our studies in the store in downtown Bloomington until everything opened up at the new temple. And then, of course, we had the classrooms. Now, the only thing I remember here is that there was a rabbi here named Landau. And I don't remember his first name. Moses Landau. And he had a son, Josh, and a daughter. And the daughter's name I don't remember. She was my age. Anne, I think it was Anne Landau. And Josh, Moses Landau wanted his son to be bar mitzvah. And there never, to my knowledge, there were bar mitzvahs here before in the congregation? Okay. Anything, I think you needed an act of Congress to get the congregation to approve a bar mitzvah. They were very, very liberal. No Hebrew. No Hebrew at all. So I don't remember any Hebrew in the services. And he had his bar mitzvah. Josh Landau had a bar mitzvah. And Josh was probably about 3 or 4 years older than I am. Then when it came around in the new temple, my mother's side of the family were all more conservative Jews. And all the boys were having bar mitzvahs. So it was determined that I was going to have a bar mitzvah too, because all my older cousins had to have bar mitzvahs, and it just was the thing we did. And I had my bar mitzvah here in 1960, right after it was dedicated, not late in the fall, in October. My mom's family's from North Carolina, and we had to arrange this around tobacco season. We couldn't have it until tobacco season was over, because they were all merchants. Tobacco season is when there's money in town. Farmers harvest the tobacco. The buyers come into the tobacco warehouses. They buy the tobacco for the cigarette and cigar companies, and the farmers all had money. So everything they've been putting on their accounts over the years, They now paid off their accounts and went shopping. So it wasn't until tobacco season was over that we could have the bar mitzvah. So it was in October. It was October, I remember that because my birthday's in August. And I thought it was a shame I had to wait 3 months or whatever it was. And we had a bar mitzvah here. And it was at the new temple. And the party was at the temple. And the caterer didn't show up. The caterer, that's not really true. The caterer showed up, but without her staff. Her staff, she didn't make arrangements to have enough people to serve it. So Sam Stern stepped up, and he was the chef that he carved the meat, and other people stepped up and did it. Now, obviously, I only heard this later. I was kind of in la la land. Wow, this is neat. All the attention on me and everything else, but the party was at the temple. It wasn't, not at a hotel or anything. We had it at the temple, had a wonderful time. The big change I've seen in our congregation has been we've gone from a merchant-based group, merchant-based people, to more service-oriented people, professional people. And a lot of at least the university people were more transient. I can remember that a lot of the teachers we had in Sunday school were university people, and they'd be here until they found a better opportunity, and then they'd go to somewhere else. That hasn't been what's happened recently in education, but back in the 50s and early 60s, it was a very fluid group. So there was a group that never really identified. They were here and they were gone. The other thing that, of course, happened was there was a lot of mixed marriages. If you go through our cemetery, you'll see Livingstons and you'll see Oaks and you'll see other names that are common in town, but they're not Jewish. And what happened is that these people married other people from town, local people, and they went the non-Jewish route rather than the Jewish route as far as their families. And that deleted some of our families here too. And I'm sorry it happened, but that's what it happened. That's what I see happen. I have had family who were very prominent in Peoria, at the Reformed Temple in Peoria. And they would talk about what they had to go through there when they lost their merchant base. Bergner's used to be headquartered in Peoria. It was bought out, and most of the head people at Bergner's were Jewish. They were great supporters of the congregation. And as they were bought out and the jobs were taken away, that group left. And the congregation dwindled. And the conservative, the Orthodox congregation there had a tremendous base in the business community, and it just about disappeared. They finally joined up, combined, build an Orthodox wing on the temple there, and then sold that big, beautiful synagogue that the Orthodox had built in Peoria. So it's the problems with the number of members we have it's not just ours. It's just kind of the times. People are just not so focused on religion as perhaps they used to be. I'm sorry to see it, but I understand. When you can have a telephone and can look up anything you could possibly think of, it makes everything different. Library, you don't have to go to a library, you Google it. I'm sorry to hear that. I wish there was some way we could change that. I don't know if we can or not. I guess I can answer some questions if you have any. Kind of got a little bit off base there, but yes, sir.
I just have a few anecdotes about the social integration of the youth here in this community back in the 50s and 60s. Trouble with Judy Marcos becoming mayor. But in the high school, for example, Judy was editor of the high school newspaper. And my other sister was editor of the high school yearbook. And my uncle Sam Stern, very proud of the community, was a big fundraiser, and our family preferred donors to the building fund for the president's St. Joseph's Hospital. And my family was very prominent in the development of Sister Cindy's relationship here with Japan, which resulted in the Mitsubishi motor plant being located in Bloomington. So it was things like that. My mother was the president of the Art Association and the Amateur Musical Club and the Brookdale Service League and the Red Cross. So they were socially very well integrated in the community and very strong in leadership positions and subsequently well respected at that time.
And we were the first Jewish members of Bloomington Country Club. That was a big deal back then.
Who was?
Any questions or anything?
Yeah. You said there was not much Hebrew. So what was the bar mitzvah like?
Oh, my bar mitzvah was.
Okay.
But I'm talking about services here. Use the Union Prayer Book. Remember the Union Prayer Book? Fort Bot was started about 1948 or somewhere around there. I mean, Hebrew on one side, English on the other side. I don't remember, besides a couple of prayers, that was it. No, my bar mitzvah was, I had to do Hebrew. Because, I had to keep up with the cousins. After all, I lived in a little hick town in Illinois.
So, Matt, wasn't that the way it was around the country at that time, though?
What?
Less Hebrew, etc.
I don't know, because I never went to I have to back that up. All of my mother's family were conservative, so in fact, some of them were very religious. They would put the tefillin on and the kids. I didn't do that. But I do have to remember when I said that when I was older, this is when we were at Robin Hood Lane Temple, I got very involved in youth grouping. I really liked it. And I'd go to the conclaves or the camps all over the country. And at those places, Hebrew was used. And, you've got, I went to Oconomowoc. I don't know if anybody here. Osrui is what it's called now.
Were you an NJ?
No.
Illinois Federation?
No. It was Central Illinois District of MMT is what it was then. Okay. But I went to, when we were there, it was Union Institute in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. Then it became Osrui, Olensang. Yeah. And it was, I loved camp. I loved camp.
Georgia?
What?
Went to Georgia?
I went to Nifty Camp in Georgia, National Federation of Temple Youth.
Georgia, home.
I went to camp in Colorado. It was Schwader Camp, Samsonite luggage and chairs. That was Schwader Company. They built a Jewish camp up in the mountains, not far from Denver, and I went to camp there. I went to one in C.W. Post Campus, Long Island University. I had a great time. And I learned a lot about Judaism in those. I enjoyed it very much.
We had a very active youth group called IFJ, Illinois Federation of Jewish Youth.
Who are
Peoria, Cedar, Champaign, Bloomington. In fact, the Sister